So today on Nature's Always Right, we are going to be shutting down the summer veg production in our garden beds here. I'll be showing you how to do it with soil health principles in mind using no-dig methods as well as JADAM, a organic farming method from Korea. As you've seen in my recent videos, we've planted out the winter garden and you can see some of that here, turnips, beets, all the different greens. But the summer stuff is done for. Next week, we're gonna get temps in the high 20s here in Tennessee. I'm in zone 7A. And that means that all this stuff is worthless now as far as producing fruit. It's done. So we need to just get that out, and I'm gonna be mulching it with leaves from the woods here and give you some other suggestions on what you can use as a great mulch and soil cover as we go into winter. I will plant another round of cover crop seed, and hopefully that will be able to sprout and go through winter. The big reason I'm doing this now, today is the last day of warm weather most likely, and it's 73 degrees today. Tomorrow we will be getting rain, and then the next few days the temps are gonna drop, we're gonna get our first freeze. So I wanna encourage you guys out there, watch the weather. A lot of the decisions that I make in my garden and on my farm in general is based upon the weather and what is going to happen, planning around that to get the best possible growth and make the best, most efficient decisions for my farm. So the first 4 beds here are all greens, all things that are coming in for winter that are doing fantastically, and we're already starting to eat some of that. Turnip greens and some of the radishes. See, right here we have our okra. You can see some of the fruit on here, but it's all kind of crappy now because it's just gotten too cold. So what we're gonna do is do this no dig. I could just rip these plants up out of the ground, but I'm not going to do that. I am actually going to cut the plant. And you know what? I need actually a bigger pruner because these bottom roots here are so thick and sturdy. And what we're actually going to do is lay the plant down onto the surface of the soil and let it decompose there over winter. Now this is a JADAM technique of reapplying the plant's materials that you grew that year. There's still tons of different nutrients and minerals that this pulled out of the soil, and it remains in this plant. And if we can put it on top of our soil, let that decompose over winter, that will return that to the soil microbes in the soil itself. I'm not going to replant all of these beds. I've basically planted my winter garden and I'm gonna get what I'm gonna get. So for these beds, we'll just kind of let them rest over winter, and then in spring they'll be replanted. So these are my Corona loppers. I've been pretty happy with these, and I think they can go up to 3-inch diameter. I don't know about that, but they will chop through this 1.5-inch, no problem. I'm chopping at the soil level as close as I can. Obviously I don't want to chop through rocks or dirt and dull my blade. I think it would be beneficial just because you see how this is laying on the soil here. I think it makes sense to just kind of chop each piece so that it's laying flat on the soil. We want the soil microbes and the microarthropods and the earthworms and all that to have access to this green material. Now, in the past, I've heard gardening and old school gardening books will talk about, oh, you should get rid of old plant material because that could carry disease into the next year's plants or whatever. But if you're growing in living soil, you're not applying pesticides, herbicides, synthetic fertilizers that damage soil biology. If you're inoculating your beds with good compost, JADAM microbial solution, indigenous microorganisms, vermicompost, worm castings, there's many ways that you can incorporate natural biology into your soil that are going to cycle nutrients and just devour these plants. And any disease or things like that will get knocked out. Now, if I did see a plant that had disease and it was pretty gnarly, I would just compost those instead, right? Why take the extra risk? And I will show you in a little bit here. I'll throw a little bit of inoculant on here and explain that further. And now we went through all this yesterday and we harvested anything that was decent, that was edible, and we've actually been pickling and preserving all of it. So here we have a chard plant that's doing fantastic. So of course I want to leave this and eat this, right? So we're going to leave this for winter. I'm just gonna pull off some of these outer leaves and drop them. I'm just removing off the leaves that don't look as healthy, and we're gonna allow this plant to get a bit healthier here. Now by just cutting the plant at the top of the soil here, we're not disturbing any soil, and leaving those roots behind is going to feed our soil biology. And if you don't know, soil biology is actually what feeds the plants. And the plant's roots work in communication with those soil microbes to give nutrition. So this okra, right, this is a bit more of a woody type plant. It's gonna be harder for it to break down. So rather than piling it all up in one spot, I'm gonna spread it out over the length of this bed. And when we come back in the spring, this may not be, 100% decomposed, like this huge chunk right here. So when I come back in the spring and replant, this may be something that I pull out and just toss into a compost pile, but why not let it rot here and let some of the different insects and things like that feed on this. So for this bed, I'm not gonna do a cover crop in it. I probably should have done that first. I got ahead of myself there. It's just too much stuff in the way. I don't envision it working very well. But this back bed that is peppers, tomatoes, and where the cucumbers were, I will do that. So I'm gonna take that down really quick using the same exact ideas and concepts, and then we'll just do a quick little cover crop in there. So even these weeds that are in here, I found a couple weeds. I'm just gonna pull them, kill them, leave them there. Unless something is dropping seeds, you don't need to worry about it. Just let it go in here. If you see something that's dropping seeds, get that plant out of there. Now, because this tomato has tons of tomatoes, I don't want to let it just drop all the tomatoes in here. I'm gonna remove the tomatoes from this so that the seeds don't sprout in the future. I'm gonna get a bunch of tomatoes next year, just sprouting randomly in here, but that's okay. Maybe I'll just let some of those grow and eat those tomatoes. And then I don't actually have to plant any seeds. The rest of this, I'm actually going to just toss it around the woods all around me. And what will happen next year is I will get wild tomatoes growing out in the woods, which I can go wild harvest, or it would feed wildlife, or even my pigs when I run them next year. So here I've got my garden cover crop mix from True Leaf Market. This is what I recommend anybody who just wants a ready to go mix just buy. It's a great price, and it's got all the different types of plants that you would want in a cover crop. There's even edible things like radishes and mustard greens that I could eat this winter if I want to. So there's a little bit of a food source in it, and you can check that out in the link in the description. If you ever need to buy seeds, check out True Leaf Market, and please buy through my link. It's just a way to support the channel at no cost to you. So what I've done is I've taken, 2 handfuls, and I've lightly spread this out. And this, if you're wondering, that's an artichoke that is kind of growing here that we planted, and it's coming back. So all I've done, I'm doing this very quick and easy here. And I'm just going to use my hands. I think the best technique, if you're gonna do it this really fast way like I'm doing, is just to push down and rub back and forth. We're really only looking for about a ½ an inch of seed to soil contact. And then just come back and look. Do you see seeds exposed? If you do, rub that little area again. You'd be surprised how little seed to soil contact really is necessary for most seeds, especially these type of cover crop seeds. I've got a bunch of leaves here as well. So we'll see what happens. If I just did the leaves, for sure, this cover crop's gonna have no issue coming through this. Now putting those peppers on top, it may inhibit that a little bit. And on Youngsong Cho's farm, the inventor of JADAM, he does not do a cover crop after he's done. He just puts these plants underneath his landscape fabric to feed that soil where he's grew peppers that year. So this is a bit of an experiment for me, doing that and the cover crop together. So we'll see what happens. If you want a guaranteed way to do this, just cover with your leaves that you've collected. If you live in an area with a lot of deciduous plants, that is what I would recommend using. Leaves are an ideal soil microbe food. And if you don't, and like where I grew up, San Diego, this doesn't exist there. So what you can do is buy in or get some straw. local straw. Some of that is going to have herbicide residue. So check out Epic Gardening. He sells an organic straw that you can buy in small bales, and for small gardeners I think that's a really great option. I think it's fantastic that he's provided that as a product for sale. I don't make anything from him, but something that I think you should look into. Other things that you could cover with is wood mulch that's been mulched down to like an inch in size. Wood mulch is another fantastic mulch that you can use. And if I can get some way out here from a tree service, I'd love to get as much as I can out here and actually take up this landscape fabric at some point and just put down wood mulch. But until I find that, we will be using the leaves that are falling from all the trees in the woods. So here, as part of this experiment, here's what I'm gonna do. We'll do half the bed leaves, just piling up an inch or two, and we'll do the rest of the bed with this, and I'll break this up a little bit better because we're doing this, using this plant as the mulch. And then on this other bed, we'll do it like this, plus the leaves, and see if we can get anything to come through that as a little experiment. And I recommend that you do experimentation as a gardener. That's one of the funnest things about being a gardener, is getting to try new methods, new techniques, and even coming up with your own ideas like I'm doing right now. And that's what makes gardening so exciting and fun for me over the last over 11 years that I have been gardening. And so what's gonna happen when we get that rain tomorrow, it's gonna wet all this down, it's gonna wet our cover crop seed that we just put in so that that will sprout. And that's another reason I look at the weather. Now I don't have to take any of my time watering or use any of my water to get this wet. I'm just using nature. So look, in like 2 minutes, I was able to clear this bed out. In another 5 minutes, I'll have it planted and with a cover crop, mulched, and done. So you can do stuff super quick in the garden. You just gotta be very intentional about it. So you may be noticing that the soil's a little bit low in these beds, and honestly, it would be good for me to add the soil now and kind of let that sit over winter. But because I'm trying to beat the weather, it's all good. I'm just gonna let this cover crop grow here, and I will chop it down at some point in spring, let it die. I'll bring in compost and cover the top of this, and then I will grow directly into that. So we are getting nutrition not only from our compost and other amendments, but from the plants themselves that we are growing, either by mulching it, leaving it on top, or putting it under the soil, putting compost on top and growing through that. And follow me on Instagram if you want to see updates to this, and I'll try to put a YouTube story up as well. Okay, so on this bed, what we're gonna do now, we're gonna do our experiment bed here. I'm gonna throw all the peppers on top, then we'll throw leaves on top of that. I think the cover crop will probably have some issues coming through all this plus the leaves. But we won't know until we try, right? So that's why we're gonna go for it. And I wouldn't be too bummed out if this doesn't work. It's not really that huge of a deal. Okay guys, there we go. That's an awesome looking bed, isn't it? So I'm showing you all these different methods so that you can play with what works for you or what you have access to. And this is ideal for me. You don't have to do this cover crop idea. I'm just throwing this in. This is gonna be excellent nutrition and protection for the beds through winter. It's gonna keep all the sun off. It'll keep the beds moist underneath. So all this soil, we're talking about living soil, right? So it's gonna stay alive. It's going to be fed throughout the winter. And we're just gonna be primed and ready to go coming into spring. Guys, please be sure to hit that like button for me, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. If you wanna see when all my videos go live, you'll notice if you stop watching a YouTuber for a little while, you lose track of them because the algorithm doesn't show you. And if you want, you can join my membership now here on YouTube, where there's different levels, but even with the lowest level, I will guarantee that I will answer your question or your comment down below. It's a great way to support this channel and my work. Another way that will cost you nothing is to buy through any of the links that I have down in the description. And it's a way to get the best seeds, tools, germination stuff, greenhouses, whatever you may need. some of these seeds, because this is so thick, some may not come up, some others may. And this is another reason to do this experiment, because it's going to show me which ones are hardy enough and strong enough to punch through all this material. Or we may find out it's a complete failure. Either way, this experience is a win. So one thing I forgot to tell you guys about was inoculants, and I forgot to add them. These are things that I can add at a later time in the winter as well. So indigenous microorganisms, JMS, JADAM microbial solution, which is a very easy one to make. Get the JADAM book I have in the description if you want to learn more about this JADAM organic farming method. This right here is called Bokashi. This is another Asian natural farming technique, Bokashi. It's debated on who invented it, but usually the credit goes to a Japanese scientist who created effective microorganisms. And this has lactobacillus and many other things. This is made by SD Microbes. You can always get a 10% discount on my website. Always link in the description for that. And this is something, these are facultative anaerobes, so they can switch between aerobic and anaerobic, oxygen versus not oxygen environments. And they are very good at cycling nutrients, breaking down material. It's something I use in my compost. It's a way that I anaerobically compost. I've got many videos on it. Because I didn't add this at the right time, I threw it on top and then I'm just gonna shake it and that'll knock most of it down. We wanna get it at that soil level or at least on top of the green material. I will be making a video soon on JADAM microbial solution. That's something that I'll just water in here. I could make some liquid IMO and water that in. I could also pull back this mulch and add a dry IMO 3 or IMO 4. Those are things that I'll be making this winter and talking about this winter because I'll have some more time to make those videos. So I'm gonna apply this to the rest of those 3 other beds, and then I'll talk a little bit about the in-ground beds and what I'll do there. Okay guys, so all the beds behind me here, you're seeing garlic in this bed. You're seeing that cover crop mix coming up that I planted weeks ago. You're seeing the vetch, the clover, the mustards, the radishes, the ryegrass, all sorts of goodies. You're seeing there's a few carrots left in these beds. I'm leaving the carrots there because I can harvest them over winter. It's kind of like a natural storage for them. Okay guys, so for the beds behind me here, all I did was cut things off at the root, just like I talked about. I decided to harvest all the carrots, get all that out of there. I'm gonna do like a real quick raking just to remake the beds a little bit. I'm not gonna get crazy. I'm not gonna add more compost. I'm in a hurry here to get this done. So just emphasizing that you can be a little bit lazier as a gardener. You know, this isn't for profit. I don't need every single square foot absolutely maxed. So what I'll do here is just probably do about 7-8 rows of the cover crop seed with the beet plate with my earthway seeder here, and then I will use the carrot plate and seed out a full bed of carrots. And I think I can get away with that here in zone 7A, and hopefully it'll germinate and be able to grow. I will probably use a frost blanket to cover that up, increase the soil temp for germination as it gets colder. And once they germinate, I will take that off, and then I'll put up hoops to, just like I did on my market garden, to make it warmer with inside of that. And I was able to do all this work in about an hour and a half. My wife helped me get all the leaf mulch so that I could distribute it out, but I worked really quickly. I had a game plan, and I even filmed this, and I was able to do all that by myself that quickly. So once you can gain some experience, like, it really doesn't take that long to get a bunch of food out of your garden. You just got to be strategic and do things efficiently. And I hardly spent any time in the garden this summer. I planted things and I walked away. I didn't hardly do any maintenance, and we got a tremendous amount of food. So as I'm making my content about gardening now, I'm trying to emphasize like the lazier gardener approach. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by gardening and all the different things that you can and can't do. There's a lot of information out there, and so I'm trying to break things down to just like the bare essentials for you and show that it doesn't have to be pretty or beautiful or the most amazing trellis or any of that. Like, this is about getting the healthiest food for our families. That's like the thing. So soil health is the big focus there to get that. And that will allow you to do a lot less maintenance on your plants. This is my first year garden. You know, check out these carrots that we grew in a first year garden. You know, you don't have to have amazing soil, just bring in good compost. This wasn't even the best compost. I spoke about how I think there was probably some herbicide in this compost and still got great results. So if you use these no-till, no-dig methods, using inoculants, using minerals, this is really, it just makes things so simple. Gardening really isn't that difficult if you're following the right techniques, and I hope that I'm presenting that in a way that you can take this knowledge and apply it to wherever you are in the world and grow the best food possible for your family or your customers.